Hey, how's it going? Bob DeBoo here. Thanks for watching. Today we're going to talk about walking bass lines, right? There's a couple things that we need to know to walk great bass lines. First up, we need to know the chord changes that we're playing under, okay? The chord changes to whatever song it is that we're dealing with. So that's a given. We need to know good chord changes that fit the melody that support the melody of the song that we're playing under. We also need to know the scales that fit inside of those chords. So two scales that are really good as far in walking are the major scale and then the mixolydian mode, or the dominant scale. So we're going to talk about how we can amend those scales, adding one note to make them fit rhythmically so we end up with good sounding notes on strong beats, and we'll talk more about that. And then we're also going to talk about how to change direction inside of these scales, otherwise known as pivoting. So we've got some good, simple exercises that we can get started with right away, and we're going to put that into a bass line under Cherokee. Now, if you're looking for a refresher on how to play your major scales, check out my course. It's called Walking with Scales. I have suggested fingerings for everything, whether it's on upright, electric bass, and also with tab on electric bass, just to get us back in the game. If you have any questions about how to practice that stuff, this course addresses that. One of the big questions or problems that I see from my students that I deal with regularly is how to walk over chords that last more than one measure without being redundant or playing the same thing. Everybody falls into this. You end up playing the same patterns because that's what you're used to and you know it works, and that's cool, but we want to try to push ourselves to find different directions, different bass lines that still sound great and fit the chords that we're working with. So the first thing we're going to talk about is pivoting. We're going to play the major scale and we're going to change direction when we hit a chord tone on beat 1. So check out this exercise with me. We're going to play the B-flat major scale, but each time that we are passing either the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, etc., we're going to play above and then go back to the chord tone so that it lands on a strong beat right where we need to do it. Okay? This is just to make us flexible with our direction, because we don't want to play too high without being aware of how to get back, you know what I mean? We don't always need to play super high on the bass, so if we just kept going up with our scales, we'd end up not fulfilling the role of a bass player and more into the soloistic area of the instrument, right? Vice versa, if we go down, we're going to end up running out of instrument, right? On the standard bass, this is down to an E, so if you play anything lower and you don't know how to get back up, then it's a problem. So we're going to talk about pivoting. Let's check that out really quick. So we're just going to do the major scale, the B-flat major scale. Play this with me now. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the root. Here's the 3rd, to the 5th, to the 7th. Now we're going to hit the 9th coming down. 7th, 5th, 3rd. Let's do it one more time. So root to the 3rd, 5th to the 7th, 9th, 7th, 5th, 3rd, root. Great. So you can do that in any direction. You could do something maybe more like this. So you see, each time I was getting to beat 4, I was moving back or forwards to a chord tone to land on beat 1, which really helps us to sound grounded inside of the chord that we're dealing with. Let's do the same thing with the mixolydian mode, which is the scale that we would play over a dominant 7th chord. So this would be B-flat 7, B-flat mixolydian. Let's try the same thing now. You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is all the same as the major scale, right? Here's the 5th. Now here's the difference. That's the dominant 7th. Here's the 9th. Back to the 7th. To the 5th. To the 3rd. Back to the root again. Right? It's the same idea. So do that in all the keys. Do that multiple octaves, and then also practice what I was doing earlier on the major scale, changing directions, not just always going up in the same direction, but getting to those chord tones and then pivoting one direction or the other depending on where you're at on the neck. Remember, we get paid to be in this area of the neck. I'm not saying don't learn this part of the bass, do you know what I mean? But for walking, make sure you can walk really well down here, half position, first position, 1.5, etc. Okay? And again, my Walking with Scales course, we do a deep dive into this, all with fingerings, and have some great exercises to practice with that. Okay? So that's the first step that we're going to talk about, or the first thing that we were practicing today, pivoting. Super important. The next thing is we're going to take those same two scales, the major scale and the mixolydian mode, or the dominant seventh scale, what you would play on the dominant seventh chord. We're going to add one note to it. Now, we've talked about this before, but it's still very important to utilize in our practice. It's we're going to add one note chromatically to make sure everything lines up really well. So we're going to talk about the B flat major bebop scale. Okay, this is where we add in a note between the 5th and the 6th degrees of the major scale. So really quick, we're going to do B flat, that's the root, C is the 2nd, D is the 3rd, E flat is the 4th, F is the 5th, but we're going to play a half step higher than that to F sharp or G flat, and then G natural, A natural, and B flat. Okay, coming back down, got B flat, A, G, G flat or F sharp, F natural, E flat, D, C, B flat. Okay? You can find a lot of material on how to practice these, but if that's a new concept to you, just realize that that is very, very important to help line up our rhythmic, our harmonic rhythm. Okay? So if we do the same thing now, where we're talking about the bebop scale, or the dominant 7th bebop scale, excuse me, we're going to play it like on the mixolydian mode, but instead of being the half step being between the 5th and the 6th, now the half step is between the root and the dominant 7th. Okay? So if we play it going up, it's like this. B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G natural, A flat, A natural, and then B flat. So coming back down, B flat, A natural. And now I'm going to pause right here because I know you're going to say, if this is new to you, why are we playing a major 7th on a dominant chord? That's not supposed to work, right? It absolutely does. And for various reasons we won't go into today, it leads in the correct direction either way, whether we're going up to B flat or down to the 7th of B flat, which is A flat. So let's play that down again. This is B flat, A natural, A flat, G, F, E flat. Of course, this is all the same as the major scale, going back down. And of course, it doesn't just end there. So make sure you're practicing these. Multiple octaves. Don't just land, on the root and never go lower. Make sure you can get down below where the root would be. Okay? So that's our two concepts that we're talking about. Pivoting on the major scale and the mixolydian mode, or the dominant scale, and then also adding in one note to each of those to make them bebop, whether it's major bebop scale or dominant 7th bebop scale. Another concept really quick on the dominant 7th bebop scale is that we can use it over a 2-5-1 entirely. Okay, so say we were on that B flat 7th bebop scale, right? The dominant 7th bebop scale in B flat. That's like a 5 chord, or a dominant chord, right? 5, we're really in the key of E flat, but we're thinking B flat 7 right now. If that's the 5, then the 2 would be F minor 7. Okay, 2-5-1, F minor 7, B flat 7, E flat major, right? So you can play the B flat dominant bebop scale over both of those chords, F minor 7 and B flat 7, and it will work. Okay? You can also utilize the pivoting concept inside of these bebop scales, as long as you don't do any big jumps, or you can do big jumps if you understand how to do it, and how to land back on chord tones. But say, for instance, I'm going to play the B flat dominant bebop scale, and I'll do the same thing where I pivot like what we were practicing earlier, but now I'm adding in that half step. So as long as I don't play any big intervals, this will work out just fine. So if I'm thinking like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So every time I get to beat 1, I'm hitting a chord tone. Whether it's a 3rd, the root, 3rd, 5th, same thing with a major bebop scale. Let's try that. So here's the bebop scale, that's major. Same idea, right? So we're just changing where we're putting that half step in, and we're practicing our pivoting. Crucial concept we want to be very good at doing. We're just talking about B flat right now, but we're going to look at the changes to Cherokee now and talk about how to make that fit inside of the changes to Cherokee, which is going to come up. You're going to play that likely in your next jam session. It's going to come up, right? So now on the screen, I've got the chord changes to Cherokee. Very common, and we're in the standard key of B flat major. So obviously over the B flat major chord, the first two bars, we can think B flat major bebop scale. So we could play this scale over those first two bars, and it'll work, it'll sound good, and it'll all be lined up with good harmonic rhythm. Okay, so what's up with the third and the fourth bar? F minor 7 to B flat 7. I was just talking about this a minute ago. We were doing a 2-5 into the key of E flat, which is coming up in the fifth bar, right? So the third and the fourth bar is a 2-5 leading into the new one, whatever. Don't at me on that, like I know we're in the key of B flat and we're going to the 4 chord, but it's like we're changing keys. We're doing a 2-5 to the 4 chord, right? Otherwise, it's a 2-5-1 in E flat. So what that means is we can play the B flat dominant bebop scale over both of those bars leading into E flat major, and it'll sound good. That's even if we're playing B flat on an F minor 7th chord. You can get away with that. You know what I mean? That will work. It won't sound like you're necessarily playing an F minor 7 chord. It'll sound like you're implying more of a B flat 7 for 2 bars, which actually you can do on Cherokee. You could play B flat 7 for those 3rd and 4th bars, and it'll still work. Okay? All right, when we get to E flat major 7, the 5th and the 6th bars, that's where we're going to put in our E flat major bebop scale. So E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, B natural, C, D natural, and E flat. Of course, back down. And make sure you're getting the range of the bass, especially in the lower end. So we're just very flexible doing that. You can do that anywhere, you know what I mean? Etc. Right? Okay, so now the next chord is A flat 7. So what can we use here? Of course, we can use the dominant bebop scale. Let's look at that real quick. Let's play it descending. So this is A flat, G natural, G flat, F, E flat, D flat, C, B flat, and then A flat again. Okay. This is also a place too where you could probably put in a sharp 11. You could put in a D natural maybe, but don't tell anybody. That'd be a good idea too. But you can play this dominant 7 bebop scale over that. Right, and it'll work out just fine. Okay, let's look at the next thing. We're looking at bars 9 and 10. Again, we're back to B flat, so we already talked about that. Do the B flat bebop scale, major bebop scale. The next bar, C7. So we can play that dominant bebop scale again. So starting on C, let's go down. So C, B natural, B flat, A, G, F, and of course down to low E. All these notes should be utilized. Don't just think about going up with your scales, which is a common thing I see with bass players, right? Or bass players that are just getting started, thinking about walking lines, right? So again, we're just putting in that major 7th along with the minor 7th or the dominant 7th, whatever your preference is on the preferred nomenclature, right? That's the sound. And again, that's a dominant chord, so that would also work if we were thinking G minor 7 to C7. 2, 5. Okay? Next bar, we're looking at the last 4 bars now. We're looking at C minor 7. This one is, we can kind of be on the fence with this. You could just think C Dorian because it's the second mode of B flat. We're in the key of B flat. Going to a 5 chord of that C. Now here, I'll just get away from the lesson really quick and talk about what scale I think works the best on this. And that is playing this scale. G, A flat, B natural, C, D, E flat, F. Now we can add in an extra pivot note here, or not pivot note, bebop scale or chromatic note, F sharp to G. So this is kind of like an altered bebop scale perhaps, I don't know. G, G flat, F, E flat, D natural, C, B natural, A flat. And you could do that, that's just one choice. There are other choices you could do with that. Back to C minor 7th here, and then, so we already talked about that, and then an F augmented or a sharp 5 chord. we're not really thinking about the bebop scale there, but you could do a similar scale to what we just did on that G7, flat 13, flat 9, or altered, or whatever you want to call it. As long as we get that C sharp in there, get that sound, because that's in the melody. So that's the augmented chord. But what you can do is add in this dominant 7th bebop and still think about that kind of sound. And it's still, you can utilize that half step between the root and the dominant 7th. Cool? So now let's check out the bass line that I provided today, just as an example for how to utilize these scales with pivoting, and then also with the extra note to make it a bebop scale over Cherokee. Again, this is just the first A of Cherokee. Nothing fancy, just a bass line I think that works pretty well and utilizes the concepts that we've just talked about. So here we go. Play the line with me. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's the major bebop scale. Now the dominant bebop. Here we go to major bebop again, but it's E flat now. A flat dominant bebop. It's a mouthful. B flat again. With a little just chromatic passing note. C dominant bebop. Here's those half step things. Here's that augmented sound. And back to B flat. Let's try it a little bit faster and just listen to it. I'm not going to speak while we're doing this. Is it outlining the chord changes? A. Does it sound fluid? B. Is it like linear? Not like a lot of big jumps. I know I'm starting off with the minor 6th descending there, but it's really just root to 3rd, right? I don't consider that a huge interval, that major 6th, because especially from the root to the 3rd, if we play it up, that's a major 3rd, down, that's a minor 6th, but it's really not a huge leap. I'm not talking about like from B flat down to F. Anyways, let's play the line again. We'll just listen to it, see if it flows, and I might continue playing on afterwards. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Try again. This is me just improvising a walking bass line. And I'm still trying to use those scales that we talked about. The pivoting idea. Of course, that would take us to the bridge, and I just landed back on the 1 there. Really just trying to walk over the first A section. So one more time, just to recap, learn your scales, learn the chord changes to whatever song it is you're practicing. Obviously, many places that you can get reliable sources for those chord changes. Most importantly from the recordings themselves. So listen, play along, transcribe bass lines, practice your scales. And again, if you are looking for a good workout to practice these major scales and then adding in that bebop scale, check out my Walking with Scales course. Great price, it's discounted down below. You can also click the link and get a PDF of everything that we were working with today, and hopefully it helps us to all get better at walking bass lines. So again, my name is Bob DeBoo. Thanks for joining me. Happy practicing.